All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our second 1383 chat with CalRecycle. Very grateful to have so many people joining today, given that the holidays are quickly approaching. Last month's webinar went very, very well. We were thrilled with the participation, the questions that you all asked, the peer sharing. It was a great first chat, and we're hoping that they only get better from here. We have a packed agenda today. We're going to be focusing on commercial sector programs. And with that, we have a number of our partners that will be presenting today and sharing some information about their commercial programs and implementation and how that's been going. We'll also have opportunity for peer share and hopefully quite a bit of time for conversation, discussion, questions as well. So I don't want to spend too much time, but before we jump in, just wanted to highlight some questions that we received at yesterday's monthly public meeting and to provide some clarity on our organic infrastructure grant criteria that we released about a month ago. So if you're not familiar, we released that criteria to provide some clarity around the organic waste infrastructure grants that we will be funding this year. And it's our largest, from a dollar perspective, program ever at about 150 million. And 70 million of that, approximately 70 million, comes from our funding that we received in 21-22 for circular economy, which was dedicated to, some of that funding was dedicated to these kinds of projects. And then we've added an additional approximately 80 million to that from the total pot of the 180 million for local assistance funding. And I just wanted to provide some clarity around that since we received a number of questions. There's still $100 million on the table for the overall 180 in local assistance. And we've heard from a number of you that are participating today, some recommendations and ideas of how that can be best used by jurisdictions. And when we're crafting how that grant program is going to look, we're going to take all of those recommendations into consideration. As Director Wagner stated yesterday, the 80 million that was put into the organics infrastructure grant was specific for jurisdictions. So that money can only be used, that portion of that money can only be used for infrastructure projects where the money is going directly to jurisdictions. And that's really to get at the infrastructure that's still needed, that we've heard from you, we've seen in capacity plans. In order for us to be successful, have the sustained success of our goal to achieve the 1383 organics diversion goal. So once again, so 80 million of local assistance money has been invested into the organics infrastructure grants, and there's another 100 million on the table where we're still designing that program and taking input from you all as to how to best use that money for the goal to support jurisdictions in achieving 1383 goals statewide. So I'm going to stop there. I'm sure we'll have some questions a little bit later on when this is on the agenda, but wanted to provide that clarity up front. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ray for opening remarks about what today's agenda is going to look like. So thank you all for joining today, and happy holidays.
Thank you so much, Deputy Director. First, thank you all for participating. We do have a very packed agenda, so I'm going to not take up too much time, just sharing some of the instructions that we have for the Q&A process. So we're going to begin with our participants, our jurisdiction participants. We'll have a brief Q&A at the end of our first half of participants, as well as another at the end of our 6 participants. So for any Q&A, please go ahead and type your question in the chat and include who that question is geared to. If we do not get to your question, please go ahead and submit it to slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov, and we will get back to you and get it to the right person. If you are joining via webcast or are not able to unmute yourself, please also submit your questions through that chat pane or through the the email box. With that, I I think we can go ahead and hand it to our Carlsbad team. Go ahead and unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to share with you all the outreach effort and the hard work that the Carlsbad team has been working on. My name is Avesita Jones, and I'm the Senior Program Manager for the Sustainable Materials Management Division. And I am joined today with my colleague, Molly Reeves, as Environmental Specialist 2. We work in the Environmental Sustainability Department for the beautiful city of Carlsbad. Well, 2022 has been a big year for us because we transitioned to a new waste hauler, implemented organic recycling citywide. We started the outreach for council-approved policies that ban single-use plastics and started the implementation of our very first food recovery program. So we're going to go to the new slide, the new agreements that to support city goals. Can you take it back one slide? Sorry. So during April 6, 2021, Council approved a new agreement with Republic Services to be the new city franchise hauler. Also, on December 14, 2021, we negotiated a contract extension with Palomar Transfer Station to operate the city transfer station. In our city, 40% of the disposal is affected by sub-haulers to the transfer station. For this reason, during the negotiations of these two agreements, we included funding mechanisms to add new environmental specialist positions. We really thought outside the box, and we wanted help with assistance with SB 1383 implementation. We prepared for this transition since we knew this regulation was already coming up. So on the next slide, on December 2021, Council approved the city Sustainable Materials Management Implementation Plan, the SMMIP, as we call it for short, established sustainable materials management systems across the city. As part of the plan, Council approved new policies such as the phasing ban for single-use plastic footwear and polystyrene throughout the city, the plastic beverage bottle ban for city facilities and city-affiliated events, the balloon release ban throughout the city, and the plastic bag ban throughout the city. Next slide, please. So I'm not exaggerating when I say that we have been very busy hiring and training new staff, transitioning to a new waste hauler, Republic Services, and providing organic services citywide. So let's start with the beginning. So when the transition to a new waste hauler forced us to take a good look at our data. Early on, we reviewed the data that was provided by the all hauler, in that case was Waste Management, and collaborated with our new waste hauler, Republic Services, to correct some of the ways that commercial generators were reported. Also, we reviewed and compared the data to plan for service adjustments. We needed to make sure that the new franchise hauler was not providing too much services to our commercial generators. Also, because of SB 1383, we needed to understand our Tier 1 and Tier 2 generators to prioritize outreach visits. There was a lot of work that went into planning the outreach visits that happened internally in this planning phase. So next slide, developing the outreach material was key for us. We started developing the outreach material to make sure that when our staff visited each business, they could assist them with the new organic services and answer questions related to the newly adopted policies for the phasing single-use plastic ban. We learned early on that the outreach material that our new waste hauler was providing and developing was not enough. We worked with our consultant, Centric, to develop additional outreach material that was targeted to our businesses and to their needs. This was very helpful for our staff when they visited each businesses to help clarify questions that the businesses had. So the next slide. So this is some of the material that was developed. I want to point out that we had to be flexible on the message and, quick to change and/or add messaging. For example, when visiting businesses, we learned that some businesses were asking for additional information on how to handle pests in their organic bins. We received the message and we were able to develop the preventing pest flyer that you see in this slide. On the next slide, please. These are some of the materials that was developed, and we can go to the next slide as well. So again, this is answering the questions as our staff was meeting with each one of the businesses, depending on the industry, and also to clarify some of the new policies that we're implementing. On the next slide. And then this is another example. So the process for the business visits, we had to train our staff. We had just hired new staff, and they were going to be doing meaningful visits to our businesses. So we had to develop a plan and a schedule for these visits. We went over the steps that were going to be required and the goals of each of the business visits. The reason the priority was developed was to have a target completion date, which was at the end of the year, this year. We visited every business in our city. The goals for these visits were to check if they had any questions about the new organic services, to confirm that they were provided all the services, to provide outreach for these services and assist as a liaison for any additional information and/or services they needed from our new waste hauler, to provide the outreach for the newly adopted ordinances and policies. And there are so many success stories that we can discuss, and I'm gonna let Molly later on discuss them. So on the next slide, we also not only role played, but we also developed checklists that were great for training as training tools and a good reminder for staff to complete the steps during the visits. Also, it assisted our staff to standardize the business outreach to all businesses. I would like to add that we continue to review and update as more visits are conducted. So we had the checklist for before the visit, during the visit, and after the visit. What was the requirements of the steps that staff was going to conduct? So if you can press, I think you can see some of the before, the during, and after. And we are currently updating and developing the new set of checklists and processes for the second round of visits. So now I'm gonna pass it on to Molly to continue with our presentation.
Thank you, Afacita, and good afternoon, everyone. Just a quick reminder, I'm an environmental specialist too, and I'll be going more in depth regarding our business visits. So if we can go ahead and switch to the next slide, please. We have a couple animations. Perfect, thank you so much. Okay, so as Avasita mentioned, our division grew significantly in a small amount of time, growing from a team of 2 to a team of 8. And much of the team was not only brand new to the city of Carlsbad, but also brand new to this type of work. I have done business visits in a previous job, but not for SB 1383 or any local initiatives. So we had to develop a brand new process for staff to follow, which was what Avasita went over just now. Overall, it was a bit of a learning curve for all of the new staff. Once we had the template that we were going to follow, we each had to develop our own individual approach for the actual visit and follow-up work. So initially, I wasn't sure how the visits would go, as we had a few hiccups with bin and cart deliveries, as well as we were working with outdated data. To combat the outdated data, I developed the practice of mailing our notification letters out 2 weeks ahead of the visit, and then following up on the letter the following week with a phone call first, and then an email confirming the visit. I found that this was extremely helpful in finding the correct contact to speak with the day of. It also helped because we set such large time blocks for our visits, and many businesses wanted to set a specific meeting time or have a smaller window of time for their visit. Our team agreed to a main goal of education rather than enforcement for these first visits. We approached the businesses as if this was their first time hearing about everything, so SB 1383 and our city initiatives. As I started my visits, I found that there were a few different scenarios for businesses. A few businesses didn't even know they had a new compost cart, and it was news to them when we showed up. Most of these carts were being used as not extra trash carts and were being tucked away in a corner, or they truly didn't have a cart at all. Many businesses were being charged for a compost cart, but did not have one and were anxious to get started. A couple businesses were super excited to get started and reached out even before our start date with our new hauler on July 1st to know when they would receive a compost cart. And most of the businesses fell somewhere in the middle. So they had a compost cart, but were unsure how to use it. But once we provided more information, they were willing to try or even excited to implement this new program for their entire office and staff. I wanted to share a quick success story about a small business that I visited. This business had implemented many sustainability practices for both how they make their product and how they dispose of it. They use a lot of local products and try very hard to use all that they have and buy only what they need. They also donate anything that they cannot use to a local men's shelter down the road, as well as share leftover product with their employees to bring home to their families. They are located in a plaza and actually help us in advocating for stationing of compost carts in each of the plaza enclosures for all the food service providers in this plaza. And this business is also a potential candidate for our new program that we are currently revamping called the Sustainability Champion Award. And it is already working with the California Green Business Network in Southern California. So that's a really great business that I was able to visit. Next slide, please. So we base our steps for our visits off of the checklist that we hand to businesses, which you can see on the screen. We developed this checklist to encompass all of the different regulations and ordinances that affect our businesses, and it is an easy way for our businesses to look back and make sure they know key information and important dates. First, we double check their experience with the transition to our new hauler and confirm that they received the correct sizes and quantities of all bins and carts that they had before. I then confirm that they have all of their correct services, including recycling and organics recycling. This step can be a bit different for each business, depending on the type of business, who we're speaking with, if they self-haul or have traditional bins. So this is where I explain the new state law, SB 1383, and go into the requirements for all businesses to have organic service. I ask to see enclosures to confirm and look inside the bins to see if they're sorting properly, if it's clean overall, and the bins are being used properly and stored correctly. On the way to the enclosure, I often ask if they have any type of employee kitchen and provide recommendations for setting up an organics can and signage for employee use. I offer visits by our recycling coordinators as they are able to come out and complete a staff training, as well as provide more specific recommendations as needed on the hauler side. This often turns into a tour of their facility, and we get to see lots of awesome things. One of my coworkers saw a business that has a truck that is used as a traveling recording studio for concerts and large events. I received a tour of Titleist and how they make their golf clubs. So overall, we learn about some creative ways that businesses are recycling their items and the steps that they are taking towards sustainability. Through this tour, I make sure to listen carefully to see if the business qualifies as a food generating business or meets any of the requirements for our local ordinances and provide information as needed. I like to structure my visits as a conversation, a kind of give and take between the business and myself, while also making sure I hit the main points we are trying to get across. Sometimes we can receive some out of the blue questions and have to be prepared for anything. More often than not, many of the businesses that we speak to are also residents in Carlsbad, and I end up answering a lot more residential questions than I was anticipating. We also have to be ready for all kinds of feedback, and I try to be as open as possible, acknowledging that while there were definitely growing pains during the transition, we're all learning together and it takes time to build new habits. Sometimes these visits take 10 minutes, other times the visits can last up to a full hour or longer. This was not something I or the team were expecting, but now is something we are prepared for, and make sure to leave enough time during the day and ask the right questions when scheduling. The biggest thing I learned during my visits was consistency and confidence are key. We are trying to find a happy medium for that specific business while also enforcing state laws and city ordinances. I usually let the business know that I am here to help and I am a resource to help them reach compliance. The team has for sure become more confident in our visits, and it is also wonderful to have us all doing the visits as we can rely on each other for different things, whether that be confirmation of how to interpret the law or ordinances or sharing experiences from the day. Next slide, please. To help with consolidating our information in a format that is easy for reporting, we now use Recyclist to document our visits. We initially thought that this would be an extremely fast process, but quickly realized it takes a lot longer to input all of our data than we anticipated. Recyclist allows us to submit an activity for all points of contact with the business, and we can select the specific activity type depending on what we are documenting. So we submit our initial 2-week notice letters, the main business visit, and the business follow-up email. Recyclist also allows us to correspond with our hauler. Our recycling coordinators have full access to all of the business accounts and can see our notes and vice versa. This helps greatly with follow-up as we have the ability to assign tasks and accounts to the recycling coordinators and set deadlines for follow-up. Next slide, please. During the main business visit, we input our data directly into Recyclist. There is a lot of administrative work that goes into updating everything in a format that is clear and concise. Often the documentation in Recyclist takes as much time as the actual visits themselves. So this includes the handouts that we gave the business during our visit, any notes that we took. We also include any pictures we take, including the enclosure, documenting where it is located, bins, carts, lunch area, any other waste options they use. If you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. We input on Recyclist the new contact information we confirm during our visits. And finally, we include any other information that's pertinent to the business that may need to be documented. So you can see some example pictures that we have and the notes that we label our pictures with. So it takes a lot of time to input everything and make sure we are including all of the correct follow-up for each of our businesses. Next slide, please. Our follow-up includes both an email recapping our visits to the business, any flyers and handouts we provided, signage, as well as confirmation that we provided their requests to our hauler. And during our business visit, a main portion of our visit is facilitating the communication between the business and the hauler. So we give our word to the business that we will be contacting the recycling coordinators at our hauler, and they have an expectation that the city will make sure whatever they requested happens. So not only do we follow up with the business after a visit, but we need to make sure we follow up with the recycling coordinators and that they follow through. So I'll go ahead and pass it back over to Avesita to finish our presentation.
So thank you, Molly. Can we go to the next slide, please? So the next steps for 2023 is that we will continue our second round of outreach, and we will be again visiting and prioritizing tier 2 visits in addition to the tier 1s, and we will be providing contamination checks. I just wanted to point out, just as you heard Molly discuss how thorough and how well planned those visits are. So there's quite a bit of work that went into planning these visits to make sure that we had all the data that we needed entered into Recyclist. Well, thank you so much for letting us talk to you today. And I'll pass it back to Ray.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker comes from the city of Davis. Go ahead and there.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Gilbert. I am a conservation coordinator with the City of Davis, and I will be talking about the City of Davis's experience with SB 1383 implementation and how we have kind of managed how we implement this in the city. Next slide, please. So I want to give a little bit of background about kind of where Davis started with SB 1383. Our story might be a little bit different than some of you. It might be, some of the things might be a little familiar. So Davis has had recycling programs mandatory for a very long time. We actually had a mandatory paper recycling program almost 50 years ago. So our residents are very deeply ingrained with recycling. Organics is a little bit newer. We started a mandatory citywide organics program in 2016. Mandatory for every single customer. So multifamily, businesses, single family, everybody. We do have a dual stream recycling program, which makes us a little bit different than a lot of other communities. Instead of having one big recycling bin, we collect paper separate than bottles and cans, which makes SB 1383 a little bit interesting when you talk about bin placement because of, we keep paper different separately than bottles and cans. One of the things that's very different about the way that we set up solid waste, and it's been like this for a long time, is that recycling is included with trash service and it's unlimited. So when you set up recycling, a garbage service, a new account for garbage service, it comes with unlimited recycling. So you can have as many recycling carts as you need. For a business, this means that you can have as many recycling carts serviced as often as you need them. Residents, you still get serviced once a week, but you can have multiple recycling carts. When we implemented our organics program in 2016, we wrapped the cost of the organics collection into our regular solid waste rates. So you get one organics cart included with your garbage account. So there was no additional cost, as far as a business looking at this, there's no additional cost to them. Of course, solid waste rates in general went up a little bit, but everybody has access to the service. If a business needs additional organics carts, let's say you have a restaurant, they need like 4 organics carts because of the vast quantities of organic waste they produce, they have to pay for those additional carts. But everyone gets basic organic service included with the regular solid waste services. And that makes a big difference when you're talking to a business about starting these programs and sorting waste. So because of this, we've been fully MCR and more compliant because we have had these mandatory programs already. However, as the folks at Carlsbad were saying, having carts is different than using them. And we recognize that. We know that our folks have these carts. How much they use them, that's what we're working on, is getting them to use them a little bit better. We do know from surveys that we've done that we have a very low residual rate in our recycling and in our organic stream. It was, I want to say, less than 10%. I think contamination for organics, and recycling is typically 5 to 7% contamination. So we know that we already have low contamination levels, but we want to start collecting more material out of the, get it out of the trash and put it into these recycling carts and organics carts. Next slide, please. So I want to show you kind of what this looks like for the city of Davis. So this is part of the thing with being an early adopter of SB 1383 by having mandatory recycling, mandatory organics. What that means is our bins look different than what SB 1383 says these bins should be. For forever, our recycling carts have been green for commercial, and under SB 1383, green means organics. So of course we'll be phasing things in and swapping things out, but it's a challenge because this is what it looks like right now for solid waste collection in Davis. Fortunately, when we rolled out organics, we did such a massive outreach campaign, and we hit every single possible media that we could for the city of Davis. And anytime we talked about the organics collection program and these brand new brown lidded organics carts, we always said that in all of our outreach, brown lidded organics carts to differentiate. So people could go out there, they'd see the brown lid, they know what it was about. We blasted that message so often that we would get that back from customers. So customers would call us, they would email us saying, I have a question about this organics program and my brown lidded organics cart, or can I put this in my brown lidded organics cart? They got the message. They knew which cart they were talking about. It was very clear with the communication. Unfortunately, it was brown, and with organics, they need to be green under the new SB 1383 rules. So we are going to gradually phasing those in. But what that means is that our messaging has to change. We have to retrain everybody all over again. And it's a challenge because when we put together flyers and brochures, we design them in-house. We like to make it as simple as possible. Okay, I have this thing, it looks like this, it goes in this cart and it looks like this. This is what the cart looks like. We can't do that anymore. because now we have a smorgasbord of carts. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see what I'm talking about, because this is, behold, the future of solid waste collection in Davis is our carts are going to look like this. And I apologize, for some reason, the organics lid on the residential single family cart has completely blown off in that picture, but just pretend it's green because that's what the color it's going to be. So some people will have a green lidded cart for organics. Some people will have a brown lidded cart for organics. Some people will have a dark blue cart for recycling. Some people will have a green one still. It's going to be all across the board. So for the next couple of years, until we get everything phased in and carts slowly changing out, it's going to be a little interesting. So we've kind of stopped putting pictures of what the recycling carts look like on all of our outreach, because I don't know how many of you guys are out there are dealing with the same issue, but as you start changing carts out, there's going to be a lot more confusion. Yes, overall, once we get to that beautiful 2036 and all the carts are the same color statewide, it's going to be fantastic. In between now and then, when we're going through this trial by fire, it's going to be a little bit confusing for our customers. So we're relying on labeling. A lot of our labels are going to, all the new labels are going to be hot stamped into the top of the cart so they don't peel off anymore. They'll be full color, they'll be bilingual, they'll have pictures of what goes in the cart. It's going to be fantastic. So it's a process, but this is what it's going to look like. We do have a dual stream collection program. So we have to have 2 different recycling carts, and because we don't want to make it confusing and have both recycling carts be the same color, for commercial, the dark blue is paper, the light blue is bottles and cans. So for the single family carts, light blue lid is bottles and cans, dark blue lid is paper. So we actually do, yes, we keep the paper separate from the bottles and cans. The trucks are divided, so no, we don't just mix it together in the same truck. That would be rather silly. Okay, next slide, please. So there have been some pros and cons to being an early adopter of these regulations. I mean, the first one's obvious, the colors of the carts. We're going to work through that. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but you can see at the bottom here exactly what I'm talking about. On the left-hand side, you can see those are what the recycling carts look like right now at commercial businesses and multifamily properties. But the new organics carts that are being placed out there are also green. So we're really counting on labeling to make sure that things are super duper clear as far as what goes in that bin. So far, things have gone really smoothly, so that's the good thing. The other good thing is that our customers are already primed for this. They've been hearing me talk about organics recycling for years, like 6 years already, so they kind of get it. It's not like this is a new change. So that's a really good thing for us. It's also really helpful because for the past 6 years, we've been pushing these messaging about you need to sort out your organics. It's city law. The city requires you to do this. The city says you have to do this. The city says you have to do this. It is so nice to finally say, guess what? It's not just us, it's statewide. Statewide, everybody has to do this. We've already been doing this. Actually, you were supposed to already be doing this. You haven't. Oh, let me help you figure this out. So it's been really helpful being able to have that messaging to people that it's not just Davis, it's everybody. We're all doing this. We're all learning. We get it. It's a lot. We're here to help. Let's get this sorted out. That's our message. Let's get this sorted out, is because we're just trying to figure out how to put stuff in the right bin. Of course, the cons, I've already said, that's the wrong colors. And it's nice that it is, we're expanding our program, but it does take a lot of extra resources to make this happen, particularly staffing. It's a lot. Granted, we all know this, right? We've all been primed for this. I don't know about you guys, but I have been living and breathing these regs for the past 4 years. So it's really exciting to actually see it happening now. Next slide, please. So let's get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty about what Davis is doing. Oh, before we do that, we're doing a few things different in Davis, partially because we have dual stream recycling. I kind of hinted at this earlier, but because we collect paper separately from bottles and cans, the SB 1383 regulations are a little bit funky for us. So the regulations say, they talk about the organic recyclables, right? You have to have a container to collect organic recyclables. Well, we have a separate container to collect non-organic recyclables, right? So bottles and cans. So when we wrote our local ordinance to implement SB 1383, we included all of the same requirements for SB 1383 for the bottles and cans recycling as well. So we have a whole thing about the non-organic recyclables and the non-organic recycling stream. We included all of that in our regulations, because otherwise we wouldn't be collecting all of that as much as we would be collecting the paper, if that makes any sense. The other thing that we did is with cardboard. We get so much cardboard. I'm sure you all do. So when we wrote our ordinance, we specified that every single business and multifamily property has to either have a cardboard collection bin or a location specifically designated in their waste enclosure for the collection of cardboard. Because cardboard recycling is free, right? They don't pay for it. They already pay for garbage service. So the recycling of cardboard is free. It's already included. So they should be doing this, right? It's already easy. Now we're just saying you actually have to. So if you don't already have a cardboard bin, get one. If you don't have space for them, we actually have these beautiful little signs that we created that we give away to businesses for free. It's just that like plastic cardboard stuff that we give away to businesses for free to put in their waste enclosure so that they have a designated space. Because as that picture down there shows, as soon as we did this at apartments, it was ridiculous how much cardboard we started collecting. And Recology, our waste hauler, hauls it away for free. So it's kind of a no-brainer for businesses. The other thing we did is we included a requirement. We kind of went beyond. I kept saying during the regulation rulemaking process, I kept asking them to actually not exclude bathrooms. So sorry, that was me asking them to not exclude bathrooms from the regulations because there's so much paper towels coming out of bathrooms. It's ridiculous. So in our local ordinance, we wrote a requirement that if a bathroom at a business or a multifamily property, not individual units, but they're common area bathrooms, if they have paper towels in their bathrooms, they're required to have an organics bin to collect those paper towels. From our experience locally in dealing with waste audits and such, we noticed that the amount of paper towels you could collect from an office is about half of what the office throws away in their trash every day. And there's no way we're going to meet our diversion goals if we're not collecting those paper towels. So we included that and we made it a requirement that they have to collect these paper towels. So we felt all of this was necessary. Otherwise, we would never, ever get all of these diversion goals met. Next slide, please. And okay, so what worked really well for us? One of the things that I love is that one of my fantastic coworkers is our FOG inspector for food service establishments. So she's the one that goes to restaurants and checks for fats, oils, and grease separators and interceptors and stuff like that. So she's already going out there every year to restaurants. So what she has done, because she's completely amazing, she takes our checklist that we developed for SB 1383, and while she's there talking to them, making sure they've got all their other, pre-treatment, stormwater, requirements taken care of, she's out there talking to them about SB 1383. And she's giving them flyers and she's giving them a checklist. Okay, these are things you need to fix. And we have an entire process set up where she enters that data into an online database system that all of our staff have access to. I follow up in 2 weeks with a postcard saying, hi, remember we just talked to you about it. You guys have these things you need to fix for SB 1383. We will be back in 2 more weeks. And then our staff goes back in 2 more weeks, again, with that same checklist. And it's, hi, it's me again. Do you remember this checklist? You have a few more things you need to work on. How are you doing with that? So we have this process set up to get businesses in compliance. We have taken advantage of every single mailing opportunity and outreach opportunity that has come to us. We work with our Chamber of Commerce, our Downtown Business Association. Anytime there's business information going out about SB 1383, we are right there. We're sending information out about this every single channel that we can. Our hauler does provide waste audits. It's part of their waste hauling agreement. And so they're providing this information and they're doing waste audits and checking for this stuff as well and giving them this information. One thing I love doing every week, we get a comment log from our waste hauler. And if you ever get bored and you want something to just read that is hilarious, read the comment logs from your waste hauler because they're talking about all the challenges they have with collection. It's quite hilarious, but it gives us an insight to whenever there's an issue with a business with overflowing waste or contamination that we can follow up immediately. So we're working on this program where we're reading those comment logs every single week and following up on that so we can get all these issues dealt with immediately whenever there's a problem. And of course, it helps that we have this environmentally minded community that wants to do this in the first place. It's a huge bonus for us. The reason why we have the organics program started in 2016 is because the business community asked us for it. So we started that in 2011 because they wanted to see it happen. Next slide, please. One of my favorite things that we do is the resources that we provide. And this has been a big push for our division, is really making sure that we've got supplies available to businesses. We get it. It's tough right now. COVID has made things difficult. We're asking businesses to do something else. We're asking them to do more. It's a lot. And I'm sure you've noticed this when you're talking to businesses about these regulations, and I have to provide how many bins and I have to give them training and how am I even supposed to know about this? So we've made it as simple as possible. We have web videos on YouTube that we've created in-house. I mean, they're not super fantastic and high-techy, but it does the trick. It teaches them what they need to know. So they can have their employees watch these, 6-minute YouTube videos, and then they've done their annual training because it talks about the regulations and how to sort waste. We give out these bins just outside my office here. I've got stacks and stacks of these bins that we purchased and slap these labels on that businesses can request via an online form, and they can get up to 4 bins, 4 organics bins, 4 paper bins for their business, or there's the labels if they just want labels so they can relabel the stuff they already have. We've made things as easy as possible by providing all these different resources, and these are all online, and they can request them online or download them or come and pick them up from our office, just to make it as easy as possible for them to implement these regulations. Next slide, please. And things that still need some work. Our program is not perfect, I'll admit that. We know that with our college-based town, we have a lot of staff turnover, especially at food service establishments. In general, there's a high turnover of staff, especially the staff that's taking out the trash, right? But with a college town, I think that maybe makes us a little bit even more so. So it means it's constant reminders. It means the business I talked to last month that was doing everything perfect, I might need to talk to again next week, because now there's somebody else there and things aren't quite perfect yet. So it's constant, absolutely constant. And yes, we know COVID has made things tough for everyone. Our businesses are struggling, and we're trying to reach out to them in, as Carlsbad was saying, in the most helpful way possible. Like, we really, really want to work with you. We want things to work well for you. We want this to work. I don't want to come in here with any kind of a violation notice or anything. I want things to go well. So if you work with me, and if you sort your waste, guess what? You might be able to downsize your trash service and, hey, save money, because that would be awesome. So we really want to make this as easy as possible. And of course, staffing. How many staff do we have to do this? Not enough. So there's me. I do all the outreach and the program implementation and development. And then we have 2 staff that part of what they do is doing these site visits and doing the enforcement and stuff. So we are clearly understaffed in order to do this, but we are doing the very best that we can to make this happen, because we are all very passionate about this and we know this is important. And this does meet all of our goals, and we want our businesses to be successful. Next slide, please. And I think that is just about it. All of the resources that I talked about, if you go to davisrecycling.org, that's our website. It looks like this. SB 1383 is right on the main page, because that is my life these days. We are on social media at Greener Davis, where you can find these videos and all sorts of crazy fun memes about recycling and composting, because if you're laughing, you're learning. So thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here, and I will pass it back over to Ray.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Our next team comes from Castro Valley Sanitary District, Naomi and Emmanuel.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Ray and CalRecycle. We are so pleased to be here today. So my name is Naomi Liu. I'm Zero Waste Supervisor, and this is Emmanuel Nava. And so I'll be doing the presentation today, and then Emmanuel and I are going to work together to answer your questions. So just a little bit about CV-SAN, Castro Valley Sanitary District. We are a special district located in unincorporated Alameda County, and we provide 2 services, wastewater and solid waste. And for our department, we focus on all things zero waste and solid waste. The district has a goal of zero waste by the year 2029. And so currently we're in a 10-year franchise agreement with the contractor Alameda County Industries, ACI. And so when I'm going to be referencing some years, I might reference 2019 or the prior franchise agreement, which began in 2009. Ray, if we could advance to the next slide, that'd be great. So we're going to be talking today about 4 topics. The first one, which you see on your screen, is about our custom bundling. The second is regarding our donation and supply request process. The third is our outreach. And lastly, about our award program. And so I want to tell you a little bit about how we got to the custom bundling. So prior to 2009, we had franchised garbage, and recycling and organics was on open market. And so as we were getting ready to include both recycling and organics, we conducted a survey of our commercial population to ask them, to let them know, hey, we're going to be introducing recycling and organic services. And if you had the option, would you want to subscribe to those services separately, meaning everything a la carte, or would you want to potentially see some savings and have things bundled? And as an example, garbage and recycling. And so what the survey told us, and this was of property owners and bill payers, was they wanted to see bundling. So we worked that into our franchise agreement in 2009. We rolled that out, and then we received feedback. And as our program has developed, CVSAN in earnest, we've had our commercial recycling organics program. We've been developing it really for the better of the last 18 years. And so as we've been implementing, we've been getting that feedback from our commercial customers. And what they shared with us was, this was good. It was really good to have my recycling bundled, meaning same service container size and frequency, paying one rate. But as I'm now added organic service, or as my recycling organics have increased, this bundle is not working out as well for me. I'm not seeing the kind of cost savings I'd like to see. So as we got ready for our franchise agreement that started in 2019, when we got into negotiations with ACI, we said, look, is there a way that we could do a custom bundle, something where the customer gets to pick, and they would bundle bin or cart service, and then the third would be a la carte. And ACI said, yeah, let's do it. So what you see on your screen is an example of where the customer, we're showing them, choose your first bin, meaning pick your color, and then choose your second. That's going to be your bin bundle. Or you could bundle 2 carts. And let's go to the next slide. And so of the bin and cart bundle options, we wanted to really demonstrate recycle and organics, because that's what we're moving towards. We're moving towards zero waste, or garbage becoming the residual. And so they're charged at a bundled rate. And if a customer wants to add garbage, as an example here, it would be charged at an a la carte rate. We also have different variations for if one of your containers is a larger size, or you want it at a different frequency. We have that built into the rate structure. And we've been getting feedback from customers that this has been providing them more flexibility. You can also have more than one bundle. So on your account, you might have 3 bundles. And so our ACI sustainability specialist and our staff, CVSAN zero waste specialists, can work with the customer to customize service levels that work best for them and maximize the rates that are built into the franchise agreement. Let's advance to the next slide. So after getting services, or actually in line at the same time, while we're working to get services set up outside the business, we're also working with the customer on what's happening inside the business. And so for over 15 years, we have offered a comprehensive donation and supply request process. And so what you see here are a variety of sizes and types of containers that CVSAN purchases. We keep inventory, and our staff help the business to make the best decisions about what types of containers and where to place them in the office or the kitchen, et cetera. And also we have decals and flyers that go along with these. So we are working with the customer to help make the best decisions about what to put where. And so our next slide shows you the form that we work with the customer to complete. As you can see on the right, we are very transparent about how much these containers cost. And so when we say donation, it's a donation from CVSAN to the business. We're making a donation to them of the supplies. So we want to be able to show them the value of the containers that we're providing. And also it helps them to understand and associate value to the service we're providing. So we help them to complete the form on the left, help to fill out the check boxes and total it up. And then after, we fulfill their order or their request, and then we will take it the next level and deliver these containers to the customer, or order and have it directly delivered to them. At the time of delivery, we can provide a brief overview. We can help place the containers where they need to be. Sometimes in that process, we'll find that, oh, we missed a container here, so we'll make notes about any minor adjustments. We can also follow back up with the customer to see how it's going. And as requested, we're able to provide more comprehensive training. For the signs that you see there in the right column, we can also customize those. So our staff have the capability we all have graphics training. And so when working with a customer, if let's say there's a franchise restaurant or any restaurant or any business that has specific items that they want their customers to see on the sign, we can help to make modifications and print those directly if it's needed. Let's go to the next slide. So we have a very comprehensive outreach program for our commercial community. And so a couple of things I wanted to highlight today. Firstly is an example of what we refer to as our one sheet. So our one sheet is something we produce annually. It goes as a billing insert. It's something we can use in visits. It's something we can email. It's on our website. And it's essentially a snapshot of the things that we'd like to highlight for the year. It's very specific. And so for our commercial community, on the left is an example of some of the things we wanted to highlight. You can see our SB 1383 badge there that we've created. We put that badge on every item that goes out the door. And that way it's recognizable and people understand what we're meaning when we reference this new law. So we have an example there of some of the things that we've highlighted last year. On the right is an example of the other side, which highlighted edible food recovery and helping businesses to understand where they fall, tier 1, tier 2, the requirements. And so this is used as a talking point as well when our staff is working with those folks. Next slide. We have an e-newsletter that we put together monthly. These go out to all of our customers who request to be on our email distribution list. And so we will send that out, again, highlighting with direct links where we'd like to help provide information. We do have analytics on view rates, click rates to see what they're opening, where they're going. And this is helpful to help us tweak the message as we're working on the monthly e-newsletters. On the next slide, we have what's referred to as our e-mini mag or mini magazine. Staff puts these together quarterly. It's kind of like a little brochure booklet that you might have gotten in print back in the day, which today everything is electronic. And so in this mini mag, this is where it's a little bit more information, stories, it's comprehensive, and you can read a little bit more for topics that we'd like to highlight. So as an example here, we've highlighted about edible food recovery and some local businesses such as the Cannery and our Cache Valley Marketplace that have been implementing those programs. All right. Lastly, we'd like to focus on our For Our Business, For Our Planet award program. This is something we started in 2009, and it's a way to really give businesses who are now implementing their, perhaps spending a little bit more on their services to include recycling organics, again, at the time when we were first started this program, and to really recognize them for going above and beyond. And so one of the ways that we award our businesses is after they fill out the application, which is very brief. It's a one-sided paper application, which we can help them to complete. We then issue them a cash award, which can help to offset maybe an increase to their bill, or a business owner might say, this is really complicated. I'm going to have to pay my staff to train them on this. This helps to offset that, as well as the recognition piece. So we're going to share with you a couple of images which help you to see how we've been recognizing our businesses. So each year we put together a calendar and annual report. And so these pictures here were from the 2022 calendar. And so we've highlighted here Kevin Hinckley Auto Tech in April. Next slide. Our Castro Valley Library, which is a 4-star business, in May. Next slide. And Castro Valley Natural Grocery in June. And so this is a really nice way. It's something that our community looks forward to receiving each year. And it really brings awareness and attention to our businesses that are doing amazing things through their recycling and composting programs. And so the next image is from an event that just took place actually about a month and a half ago. And it's our 4-star employee recognition event. And so these are some of the participants that came out that day. We held it at a local public market. You can see back there, we have Devout Coffee. And so what we did was, for all the employees that came out, we gave them a token. They were able to go get a free coffee and pastry. We distributed, reusable mugs, and it was really to help to highlight and recognize the work that the employees do. They're such an important piece of program implementation. And so by really focusing on the employees and telling their stories, we're able to really encourage and recognize the work they're doing. And so this morning, where we hosted the event, Emmanuel was able to get great video coverage and conduct interviews one-on-one with participants that we can then later build into videos or other forms of marketing or communication about the program. So that's a quick wrap up and highlight of 4 areas of our commercial program. We have our contact information on the next slide. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, and then we'll be on for Q&A later. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Thank you to all of our speakers. Let me go ahead and pause the share. Right now, we'll go ahead and go into our first Q&A session. Just as a brief reminder, this is being recorded. It will be available once made ADA compliant on the CalRecycle YouTube channel for anybody asking for those resources. Please insert your questions into the chat pane. Make sure you're addressing them to everyone so that all of our staff can go ahead and see and participate that way. If you would not like to insert your questions through the chat pane, please send them to slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov. We'll go ahead and get the first question started. For the questions after, we'll go ahead and call on you. Please unmute yourself, state your name and affiliation, and we'll go ahead and start with Craig Sissel. This question is for Jennifer. Are all your cards collected weekly, or are there any of the cards collected bi-weekly? Thank you.
All of our cards are collected every single week.
Thank you. The next question is also for the City of Davis from Benjamin Novita. Approximately how many commercial accounts are there in the City of Davis?
Oh, you want me to answer this, Ray? Right? Okay. Sorry, I didn't know if you wanted the person to. Okay, so we have about 956 commercial accounts. So the commercial for us, that includes multifamily, but they're all in the same rounds.
Now, Marissa Acosta. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, state your name and affiliation. You didn't indicate who the question was addressed.
Okay. Give me a second. Remember my question or when I asked it?
So the
Oh,
question,
it was the contamination rate for, I think it was Davis that was doing like the paper towels in the bathrooms. I was just wondering about the contamination rate.
Yeah, I had actually concerns about that too when we first started. So we did a test pilot at our own offices. And what we found worked was, oddly enough, not changing people's behavior. So when you go into a bathroom, especially if it's a bathroom you use regularly, you kind of intuitively know where you throw your paper towels. So what we did to make it so we wouldn't have contamination and we wouldn't have to modify anybody's behavior, we took the trash can that is being used to put paper towels in right now. We just stuck labels on those for paper towels, and then we put a tiny little trash can someplace else in the bathroom. And oddly enough, that worked. So we tested this at city facilities for a year before we started asking businesses to do this, and it works. It sounds strange, but it's really that easy. It's just not modifying anybody's behavior. They're already getting their paper towel and throwing it into that bin right next to the sink, just labeling that. And that's what we tell businesses. And we give them labels. We have printed out labels that businesses can get from us for free that they can just stick on those garbage cans so that now it's a compost bin. Boom, that was easy. And we don't get any contamination issues that way.
The next question is coming from Kendall Christensen. It's regarding composition of green waste and food waste, and also the capture rates of household generated food waste. Kendall, you're unmuted on our end. If you can unmute yourself, there's a specific question you want to ask.
No, that captures it. Thank you. Just curious about what the experience is from a data perspective of actual efficacy of the green bin programs.
I think we can go ahead and open that question up to any of the panelists.
So we haven't, what we've found is that our organics carts, when we did a study in 2017, I want to say it was about 5% food waste. Now, food waste, we consider food waste to be different than food scraps and food sold paper. One of the reasons that's so low is because the city of Davis also has an on-street yard material pile collection program that's seasonal, but we do also have that program going. And at the time, back in 2017, when we did that, we had monthly collection of yard materials. So that's not the only way that people have in Davis to get rid of their yard materials, but we had about a 5%, and that's across all routes. That was an average. Of course, the commercial routes have a higher percentage because it's more restaurants, but that's what we found with our data that we did in 2017.
So the second part of that was about capture rates. If there's any data so far to say what % of household food waste is being captured by your green bin program?
So we don't have data on that because we're not doing the contamination monitoring via the audits. We're doing lid flips, and our lid flips haven't started yet. We're working on that. So I don't have a capture rate on that yet. The folks, if there's any jurisdictions that are doing the full audits at the landfill to audit their gray bins, they would have good capture rate data. But for folks that are doing lid flips like us, we don't quite have, even when we start doing them, we're not going to have that level of detail on that, I don't think.
Thank you. And since I had also asked one about paper towels while you're on, about whether you've seen any, your answer was interesting on no behavior change as a way of getting contamination rates minimal. Have you seen any switch to air dryers now that you're added paper towels to your collection program?
No, which is interesting. I was wondering if we were going to see that, and we haven't, because it's so easy. We're not asking them to do anything different other than put a label on there. They already have the organics carts. This is not costing them any more money. It's such a simple switch. I have not seen that. It hasn't been an issue.
Good, thank you.
Thank you both. Our next question comes from Sarah Ahern. Sarah, you go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question to Molly with the City of Carlsbad.
Yeah, hi, Molly. You had mentioned that right now you are using Recyclist as far as tracking your contamination for your site visits. And I know that you have a third-party hauler. Does your hauler have something like a Routeware or a Third Eye that actually captures live pictures as well for contamination and sends that to you and also has that tracking, or do you only have Recyclist? I was kind of curious on how much those two different softwares overlap.
I can, thank you for your question. I can go ahead and pass that over to Avasita, and she can provide a little bit more information on our hauler side.
At this point, we're not using the photos that the hauler is able to take. So maybe in the future, so we're not using the photos to go on or to be uploaded into Recyclist.
Are you tracking any NOVs with Recyclist, or are you just doing the waste audits with Recyclist?
We have not started the NOV process. We're in the middle of developing it, but we will be tracking it through Recyclist.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next question is from Allison Schill regarding how receptive businesses were to postcards that were sent out. So Allison, you're unmuted if there's anything else you wanted to add.
No, I just was wondering in the initial postcard sending of Davis, like how receptive were the businesses?
I love that question because we haven't actually had to do that yet. So far the businesses that we have that initiated the checklist for, they've had other issues that have come up during their fog inspections that require more immediate follow-up rather than a 2-week time frame. And so we haven't had to send out the postcards yet. The response to the checklist that we've been using has been good. Once they get the checklist, I can tell as soon as our staff go out and do that, because I immediately get an email request for all these bins and labels so that we can get them set up with the correct resources so that they can become compliant. So I don't know about the response to the postcard because I'm waiting to send those out. I want to send them out. I just haven't had a chance yet, but hopefully soon. And they do like the checklist because it's a very simple, okay, this is what I need to do in order to do the things that I need to be doing. So that's a good response.
Hopefully that cleared it up. Our next question comes from Sarah Letton to CV San. It looks like Naomi already addressed it, so I'll just go ahead and read that response. And if Sarah, you wanted any more further clarification, you're free to unmute yourself. Sarah asked about edible food recovery and the franchise agreement. Naomi stated that no, they did not need to modify their franchise agreement to address edible food recovery in Alameda County. We had the option to opt into a countywide enforceable ordinance, which CV San opted into. Staff has provided outreach. Enforcement will be provided by Alameda County Department of Environmental Health. Sarah, you're unmuted on our end if you'd like to add anything.
Yeah, just maybe a quick follow-up and tapping the brain trust on the webinar as well. I'm in a small city. We have a waste hauler franchisee. They take on, of course, all of the organics, recycling, composting and stuff, but it's landed on the city to take on the edible food recovery piece. This is just a really daunting thing. We're doing okay, but we're so understaffed, and just wondering if how others are maybe bringing on additional staff to help with this and like how that's funded. So just curious. Wouldn't mind seeing a couple more responses in the chat from other jurisdictions or haulers or whatever online on the line. Thank you.
Hey, Sarah. Hey, thank you for that question. In February, we're going to have edible food recovery as our focus, February and March. So if it's okay with you, Ray's going to make note of that question and we'll try and tee that up in those webinars so we can have some sharing on how folks are doing that, if that's okay with you. Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Kara, and thank you, Sarah, making that note now. And I think with that, we can go ahead and move on to our next participants, Chris with Lake Forest, make sure we have time to get through all of our jurisdiction contacts. If we did not get to your question, please go ahead and send it to the SLCP inbox and we'll go ahead and follow up with you and get it to the proper channel. City of Lake Forest, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can
Okay, very good. My name is Christine Groves, and I'm the Public Works Senior Management Analyst for the City of Lake Forest. And I will be covering how Lake Forest made the big push to 100% compliance with our AB 1826 and 341. Next slide. First, a little bit about who we are. We are located in Central Orange County. We are a contract city model. So we only have about 60 full-time employees who are covering all the workload. And we have a population of about 86,000 in 29,000 households. So a little bit about our business community. Our business developments include commercial and professional office space, business park and light industrial. We don't have any malls, there's no hospitals, there's no colleges, and there's no heavy manufacturing. And we have about 105 multifamily properties. Next slide. Specifically within our city, our solid waste services includes a franchise agreement with CR&R. It's an 8-year agreement with 2 one-year extensions based on performance measures that are related to implementing AB 1826 and AB 341 recycling programs. So they were awarded 1-year extensions because they implemented a certain number that they were required to implement within a certain deadline. And with our franchise agreement, we are given 2 full-time dedicated recycling coordinators. They are dedicated specifically to the city of Lake Forest. We also have a consultant, economics, and within the city, we have me. This is not my full-time job. I'm only doing this about 80% of the time. I also do contracts and budget and grants for the Public Works Department. So I'm very grateful to have a part-time intern to assist me. Next slide. So in January, when we heard from CalRecycle that we needed to make a big push to get 100% compliance for 1826 and 341, we took stock of where we were. Our commercial under 1826, we had a non-compliance rate of almost 42%. That was mostly in the green waste area. Of the 307 non-compliant, we only had 33 non-compliant food waste generators or food waste generators. We only had 1 multifamily that was out of compliance. And for our 341, we had 10 properties and all of our multifamily were in compliance. So prior to the January push, our efforts were toward a good faith effort, which was our understanding of where we were going on this. We mailed out our letters with self-reporting forms to all of our generators annually. We got their self-reporting forms back and we put it in our little database, and then we followed up with those who did not respond. The hauler agreement has incentives to set up food waste programs, and our hauler recycling coordinators were in the field working with the businesses to get them into compliance. And then in January, we heard from CalRecycle, and we had some challenges. It changed from a good faith effort approach to now we were under threat of a formal plan, which we did not want to partake in. And we were dealing with a lack of resources, which everyone is. That includes staff, time, and money. COVID-19 had hit. There were business closures. There were businesses who were no longer working in their offices. And in some sense, we felt we were kicking them when they were down. And we also had to suddenly shift our work effort from SB 1383 to MCR and more. So at this point, we had a decision to make. We knew where we were. We took stock of where we were. What were we going to do now? We could hold the hauler responsible. They were per our franchise agreement, they were responsible for implementing the programs, and we could play hardball with them. But in the end, we did have a deadline to meet, and we felt that taking a team approach would be the best way and to put resources toward the project to make our deadline and to avoid the formal plan. Next slide. So by April of 2022, we had full compliance. So it took us 3 months. These are graphic displays. You can see where we hit the low hanging fruit, and then we had some stalling of the harder accounts. Next slide. One back. There you go. Thank you. So this is, we put our team together, and after we made the decision, we built the team. We had our 2 recycling coordinators from the hauler. They conducted site visits. They prepared compliant service proposals and spoke with the business owners. And they took on the food waste, the 33 food waste generators that were out of compliance. Meanwhile, our consultant, economics, and the city, we were sending out notices, letters, we made phone calls, and we talked to every business and talked to them about getting their green waste information. Who is your most of them had landscapers, third parties. So we were getting the name and the information, and we were verifying. And then we defined our goals. Our overarching goal was to avoid a formal plan status with CalRecycle. That's what we really wanted. And so when we met weekly, we measured our progress, we discussed any difficult accounts, and then we set our weekly goals. Where did we want our number to be the next time we met? We also needed to set up our resources. We don't have a Recyclist or Minerva, so we used Dropbox with tracking spreadsheets. We put all of the copies of our letters and correspondence and other documents, and this was the basis of our meetings. We all met and discussed these tracking spreadsheets. Where are we? Who's talked to whom? And then we had to also gain support from management. Orange County, as most people know, is a very conservative area. Our council is conservative, but they knew that we needed to get into compliance. So we were able to gain support from them. We were also able to grab staff from another department, our economic development folks, since they have a business sense. They came and helped us make phone calls that we needed to make. And we were given budget for additional assistance from the consultant. In the end, we did need $24,000 for our consultant to assist us with getting into compliance. Next slide. So keys to our success in meeting that deadline and avoiding the formal plan. We had a team with the right stuff. So we had 2 recycling coordinators from our hauler who were our boots on the ground, who knew how to get out there and right size and talk with our businesses and figure out what they needed. We had our experts from our consulting team, and then we had staff who could give that extra voice. Sometimes businesses just wanted to speak with someone from the city just to get confirmation that this is what they had to do. We also built communication and relationships, not only among our team, but with the businesses. Sometimes just talking to them on the phone, we could talk to them about what the program was about and why they needed to do it. We also learned to speak to motivations. Some of the businesses, it was a cost issue. So we talked to them about right sizing with the potential to save. So in our franchise agreement, our recycling and organics is half the cost of a trash bin. So our boots on the ground recycling coordinators were there to evaluate what was in their waste and to talk to them about right sizing and recycling and training them how to do that. Some of our businesses are willing to do it because it's the right thing to do. So when you're talking to them, you're talking to them about the environmental benefits and they feel good about that. And then we have our customers who they will only do it because it's the law. So we use the state is making us do it. We have to do this. And so there's no getting around it. So again, we had our boots on the ground, solving problems and addressing barriers. We used clear escalated language on our letters. We had our first letters and then our second letters got a little sterner. We had the red box that said action required to make the business read the letter. And so we escalated that, and then there was a phone call. And we did maintain support from management and the city council. So next slide. So what is next for us? We have 100% compliance with our commercial SB 1383 food scrap recycling, meaning they have all the bins. We have 2 commercial accounts remaining for the dry recycling. These accounts fell below the threshold of the AB 341, but they got picked up under SB 1383. So we're actively working with them and expect to have them in compliance within a week or 2. And we're shifting all of our goals from dropping bins and getting compliance to looking at quality improvement. Our boots on the ground will be doing contamination monitoring, educating, doing the, reaching out because of, like other people were talking about, the staff turnover and making sure everyone is trained in what they need to be doing. And so we'll be continuing our education and outreach campaign. We're looking at branding. So we came up with this brand here. We're probably going to tweak it a little, but that's how we're going to move forward. My contact information is there. I also have one of our recycling coordinators and one of our staff from economics that are here to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Chris. Now with the city of Hermosa Beach, we have Douglas Kraus. Doug, if you're ready.
I am ready. You can hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Thanks, everybody. So good to be here, and got a lot of great information. I feel like mine's a little anachronistic, but at the same time, I know there's cities in every stage of this process. So I will just go back in time to 2019 and get this started. So first slide, please, Ray. So in 2019, we were a little behind the curve on catching up with 341 and 1826. So we worked with our hauler, and as everybody's mentioned, your hauler, of course, is fundamental to all this. We have a good one that we get along with, and so we've been able to kind of scratch each other's backs and get a lot of these things going even before maybe we had all the mechanisms in place just to get compliant. And it's paid off. The relationship's been great. We've recently extended that agreement. And with that extension, added all the necessary services and other things. So I know you all know this, but cultivate those relationships and contract extensions or amendments are great ways to get the things you need. And I think, from what I learned in my research on that is that the 1383 programs are not, depending on where you are to start off with, are not necessarily as expensive as you would think. Now, there's a lot of other costs in the industry right now, but if you're, specifically targeting 1383, you might be able to get a lot more out of it than you think. So in 2019, we worked with the hauler and obviously our city council to get an extraordinary rate increase, which was leaned more heavily on the commercial customers. But the result of it was that all commercial customers could get free organic service. So, a no-brainer, right? It's free. Why wouldn't you want it? Well, we didn't have a code to force them to do it. So we used as much persuasion as we could, and site visits were key. We're fortunate Hermosa Beach is a small town. Our retail and commercial areas are kind of concentrated. So with the help from our haulers and their recycling coordinators, they went door to door and told everybody and did staff trainings here and there and lots of flyers and information to get the program going. On the residential side, again, Hermosa is kind of a unique location, a lot of really tiny lots, and so not a lot of yard waste. So for forever, organic, or yard waste, green cards were optional for residential customers, and there was a fee because not many people needed them or used them. So that's foreshadowing there. We'll come back to that theme in a minute. So we focused on the commercial. It was free, God service, especially in our popular downtown area. Made sure they all had cards. Crossed our fingers that they were using them correctly. But nonetheless, we had to develop informal and formal plans for CalRecycle because we were not compliant. So we were a little behind the curve on 341 and 1826. And as you all probably experienced, that timing was interesting, that kind of the in-between time, because we all knew 1383 was on the horizon. So we used that time, developed the plans for CalRecycle and really kind of just shifted gears, once that tipping point in time hit, that we realized, let's go forward with 1383, be ahead of that curve, and accomplish, of course, all the goals of 341 and 1826 at the same time. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is just the flyer that we handed out. Nothing too fancy, all the essential information. And again, as you probably all recognize, by getting these commercial customers aware, somewhat educated, even if they weren't participating, they were ready for when 1383 came along. So, we tried our hardest on this. And again, that kind of door to door, we use a lot of social media here in town, and we have a pretty robust Chamber of Commerce. So, kind of polite guilt trips on everybody to participate and just hit them from different angles with the messages. And we've lucky to have residents that would pick up on this and report back to us that, oh, this business is not doing this or not doing that. We also have a single-use plastics ban in town, which of course is separate from this, but that synergy of kind of compliance and customer awareness was helpful. And I'll get into that a little more in a second. So next slide, please. Thank you, Ray. So again, having that kind of the downtime, working on a formal plan and realizing, what was on the horizon with 1383, we moved forward faster and got our mandatory ordinance in place in early 2021. So certainly ahead of a lot of other cities. And, of course, that was a great gesture, something my CalRecycle rep was very appreciative of, but it served its purpose. And we went pretty standard on our ordinance. One thing we did do is we moved up our enforcement timeline to 2023. So in a week or so here, I can actually start citing people. Of course, nobody wants that, but it is a useful tool. And, I'll get to that in a second too. So with, again, the haulers' cooperation, and before we had the contract amendment and extension in place, they rolled out carts to everybody, all the residential, all those people that never wanted one got one, all the commercial that was educated but not participating, now they had it. And so, as of today, everybody in town has a green cart that needs one. We have a handful of exemptions, for volume purposes, no space constraint exemptions. And we utilize this to, roll them all out, got everybody going. And in that enforcement piece, we have three residential customers that put their foot down and said, no, I don't want a cart. And I let them know, I said, hey, well, you can get a year of that attitude, but again, in a week or so, I will be mailing them something. We can crack down on them. And it's only three that we know of. Certainly not a major concern, but, nonetheless, right, that's what we use enforcement for, as a tool. So accelerating that, possibly utilizing it, sends a great message. And hopefully, not that we're role models, but, offers an option for other cities that maybe are a little behind, but you could speed things up and get right up to speed quickly, I think. So the other kind of tip, if anything, I can share is we have a green business program, which is overall sustainability measures, energy efficiency, et cetera. And we have a consultant that visits sites and inspects for that. And then we also have stormwater inspections, right, which most of you have in some form or another. And so we've utilized those two along with our haulers, site visits, to kind of have different eyes on all these businesses. So, our stormwater consultant can go in there, they're going to look at the trash. They're going to make sure you're recycling or doing it right. And so, even for AB 827, we use them to be our eyes and ears. And at the same time, we offered, if you need a 3-chamber container for your restaurant, we'll buy it for you, So again, eyes and ears, but with a friendly smile and something to offer. So utilizing all those is good. Those inspection cycles are all different. So we get multiple visits per year to all the sites. We've done our contamination assessment, and just continuing to roll things out. And by being on time or a little ahead of the curve, we're learning some lessons, but also we can test out different techniques for outreach and, logistics and everything else, so that, by 2023, certainly by 2024, I would like to think that we know what we're doing much better than we do now. So I will keep it at that. That was, you know, that's how we did it. You know, and I will say, going back to 2019 when we implemented those special rates, that was only part of the story, right? I mean, that was kind of just to fund 341 and 1826. It wasn't enough to fund 1383. So we did do another rate increase with this new extension, but it was a less of an increase because of what we had done in the past. So as much as I look back at 2019 and wish we had kind of just projected forward for 1383, you know, it was probably more palatable for customers certainly to have it in these stages. And you know, again, so far so good. You know, at least everybody has a card, and now it's just getting them to use it correctly. So with that, I will stop and again here for any questions or comments.
Thanks so much, Doug.
Thank you.
Go into our hauler perspective with Mid-Valley Disposal. Just a quick notice, if you are interested in participating in our peer share, please go ahead and indicate that in the chat so that we can have a queue of people to go to once we reach that portion of the webinar. And so now we will hear from Mid-Valley Disposal. Thomas, are you on?
I am on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for CalRecycle, or thank you to CalRecycle for throwing this webinar. A lot of useful information, and it might feel like I'm reiterating a lot of stuff that you heard so far, but I'm going to try to make it as easy and friendly as possible. So a little bit about Mid-Valley Disposal. We are a third-party hauler. We have 31 jurisdictions that we currently service across 5 counties. So we're pretty heavy in the Central Valley and between Los Banos, Fresno area, almost all the way up to Bakersfield. And I'm here today to talk about MCR, MORE, and SLCP implementation and everything else that goes along with that. So with that, Ray, I'll go to the next slide. So as most of you guys have heard, either your third-party hauler or you are going to hire a recycle coordinator in-house. Here at Mid-Valley Disposal, we currently have 18 recycle coordinators. And when 1383 was implemented, it jumped from 6 to 18. So you can see the kind of boots on grounds it takes. But just to kind of go over what our recycle coordinators are in charge of, they're basically in charge of assessment and education. Here in-house, we require our recycle coordinators to do 30 site visits per week. Now, those are not new assessments. Those are assessments and also follow-ups. Like Davis said, and I believe Carlsbad said, follow-ups are very important to ensure compliance is being reached at all times. So that 30 site visit is a combination of both. Like I said, they do contamination monitoring, where they will go up to the site, check each stream, see the level of contamination, document it, take pictures, and then also reach out to the generator on site during the site assessment to go over the problems. Obviously, we document the findings, like I said. We go out to new businesses for new business recommendations. So if there's a business coming online, then we will go out there, talk to the generator about what they expect, and kind of what they foresee happening with their streams, and then we'll make a recommendation.
Just because who knows how long.
Sorry, but I think Esmeralda, there we go. Perfect, Esmeralda, thank you. We educate the generators. Again, we follow up to ensure compliance. We do event education as well. So each jurisdiction that we have will have a Christmas parade or a 4th of July event or some sort of event that we can attend. And our recycle coordinators make it a point to go out to those events. We have a booth, we have continued education, we play games with the generators. I'll get into more of that in a slide coming in a little bit later. And then of course, we work directly with the jurisdiction to ensure compliance targets are being reached. So that's kind of what the boots on the ground is for us here at Mid-Valley. I'll go to the next slide, Ray. So continued education and outreach. So this is how we go about kind of our education and outreach portion from Mid-Valley's perspective. We do community engagement. Like I said, we do outreach and events. we try to, like I said, go to as many events as possible. I think that gives us a chance to really talk one-on-one with generators and give them any technical assistance they may need. Those tend to be a lot of residential customers, to be honest with you, and not so much the commercial aspect. I know we're focusing on commercial, but the events give us an opportunity to really talk with residential generators to kind of educate them about, what waste goes in what stream. We do digital media as well. We have our own website. We have social media, both Instagram and Facebook. Most of our educational outreach has QR codes on them that will take you back to a landing page within our website that gives you even more information of what we're trying to do. And then we do traditional marketing. We have a TV ad that currently runs in the Valley right now about 1383 and how to properly dispose of your food scraps. We do radio marketing and also local advertisements in newsletters, e-newsletters, Chamber of Commerce, just anything that you can think of local advertisement, we try to touch our hands on. Next slide, Ray. So I'll go over the kind of educational material we provide. It's a lot like what Carlsbad has and what Davis has. It's just our own little spin and flip on it. So the things that we predominantly provide are 1383 informational flyer. That gets sent out at the beginning of 2022 to all of our businesses to give them the information about what's going to be coming down the pipeline. We have a recycle guide, a organics pill user guide, and then an annual instructional service guide. And if Ray will go to the next slide, it'll show some examples of those slides. This is an example of our 1383 bill. This went out to all generators, commercial generators in the very beginning of 2022, reminding them of what the bill was, who is affected by it, what needs to be done, edible food recovery portion, and how their food waste is being turned into organic compost. We have an organic composting facility. It's a GORE system. And so we are very hands-on with the fact that we take their scraps directly to a composting facility that we actually run. Next slide, please. This is our recycling guide. This is probably our most beneficial guide that we produce. This tends to be a crowd favorite at events and when we do our contamination monitoring and follow-ups. This gives you recycling organics and garbage. It gives you a picture of the can or bin. It gives you pictures of accepted and kind of tells you descriptions of accepted. We have a new recycling guide with the QR code on it that actually takes you to a landing page that actually will tell you what is not or commonly not accepted items in these streams. So this is just a little snippet of what goes out to a lot, if not 100% of our generators. Next slide. The instructional service guide. You can see that the instructional service guide has the recycle guide on the very top, but these are specifically tailored to each of our individual jurisdictions. Because we oversee so many jurisdictions and the franchise agreements can be different with each jurisdiction, we tailor make instructional service guides that go out at the very beginning of the year to all residents and commercial businesses. As you can see here, it gives you the recycle guide in a smaller form, tells you how to place your carts, tells you what kind of services we provide, Christmas tree disposal, gives a holiday service schedule, cleanup events, which I'll talk about later, and then the recycling department phone number. So if you have any questions, you can get in touch with us directly. Next slide, Ray. This is our organic pill user guide. I know that Davis had a form of this, and I think it was Carlsbad that also had a form, but correct me if I'm wrong. But this is our in-house kitchen countertop food scrap organic pill. And we give these out as promotional items. Our jurisdictions can purchase these from us. And when we do give them out, we give this educational sheet with them to tell them exactly how to use it, what it's being used for. Again, there's another QR code, and you can see that it'll take you back to a landing page that has more information about what the message we're trying to get across. Next slide. Okay, so we were talking more about MCR and MORE in the very beginning and compliance, and I just wanted to talk to you how we went about getting full compliance in our jurisdictions. initially we did a desk audit. We review the type of business, we call the generator, we talk to the generator about what kind of waste is that they're producing. We also Google map it to look at the landscape to ensure that they don't have any landscape that may fall into the trash if they don't have an organics on site. So we try to knock out the desk audit first to kind of weed out the businesses that we think don't even need the 341 and or 1826. And if they do, we can talk to them about waivers and such, and we'll get down to that in a minute. But after we do the desk audit, we then go do physical assessments. We visit the generator site, we conduct an assessment, we determine if the generator is currently being compliant. And if they're not being compliant, we make recommendations on that compliance, whether that be service increase or getting a green can or cart or bin on site. But then we also talk to them about waivers. We do, for 1383, we do de minimis waivers and limited space waivers. For 1826, we had backhaul or self-haul. And same thing for 1820, for 341. So we are currently working within our waiver, or working with the waivers that CalRecycle has deemed approvable for each one of those programs. At the end of the day, as a third-party hauler, we are simply going out and making the assessment and making the recommendation for the waiver to the city. Then the city will then go back and they will then do their due diligence before they approve it. So again, it still falls back on the city to approve that waiver, but we do a lot of the legwork to get them there. Next slide. So when we have non-compliance, and as you guys can all attest, this happens everywhere, right? There's always the 3 customers that want to put their foot down, that don't want to do what they want to have to do. So what we've been doing with our jurisdictions is we attempt to achieve compliance first and foremost, right? We call or email the generator, we make in-person meetings, we go over the rules and the regulations and why they have to be compliant. If we're still not getting any feedback from the generator, we then get the jurisdiction involved. We will talk to the city or the jurisdiction, let them know all the accounts that we have that are non-compliant, and the city will then reach out. If the generator is still not being compliant, we have implemented an auto rollout system where we send a letter to the generator. It gives them a 2-week window to respond to the city's request, whether that be they need to be reassessed for a possible waiver, or they're ready to bring their bin or cart online, whatever that may be. After the 2 weeks is up, obviously the people that have responded were taken care of. For those that did not respond, we roll out services. Now, it's important to remember when you're doing an auto rollout service, just like one of the slides said before, just because they have the can doesn't mean they're using the can. So it's up to us as recycle coordinators to then follow up on those auto rollouts. So every auto rollout that we've done in every jurisdiction, we go back 30 days later and make sure that they're being compliant. If they're not, we give them a contamination warning, which I'll show you on the next slide. Next slide, please, Ray. Here's what our residential and commercial contamination warnings look like. We obviously have our recycle coordinators review the waste streams for contamination, like I said before, and then we give them a warning, right? We're not into the enforcement yet, not until 2024, and that would still fall back on the jurisdiction. For most of us, we will do the legwork, but they're still going to be the ones enforcing these fines. But what we're doing is just giving them warnings and then educating. So what we'll do on a site assessment, like I said, is we'll go look through the streams. If we see that there's some contamination in any stream, we will then go into the business, talk to a manager, or attempt to talk to a manager, and then also get owner information and or property management information, to make sure that we are hitting every person we can with the education needed for that particular business to be compliant. So these are warning tags that we leave. We will slap these on the bin themselves, or we'll take them into the business. If somebody's on site that can take it, we'll take it from us. We will then give them a recycling guide, remind them what needs to be done as far as diversion is concerned. And then while we're in there, we do as well talk with them about 1383 and what that looks like moving forward. Next slide, Ray. So I know that we're going to talk SLCP in February, I believe Kara said, but what we've done as a third-party hauler is we've already identified all of our tier 1 and tier 2 generators and gotten them a educational packet about what to expect in 2023 for the tier 1s and then what to expect in 2024 for the tier 2s. So again, customers completing de minimis waivers. For a business that thinks that they don't qualify, we will go back out, have an assessment done, and fill out a waiver if we feel that it's warranted. And again, we send those recommendations to the city for final approval. We ensure that the food generators are implementing organics. We make sure that they have a bin on site if they fall within the requirements. And again, we follow up and reassess the business to ensure compliance. I think that following up is really the cornerstone of adequate diversion. So we definitely do a pretty big job of trying to follow up. In fact, we have an Excel spreadsheet that we put together that will show you the date of the site visit, if they were contaminated, if they weren't, if they were, it automatically schedules you 2 to 3 weeks out, depending on your schedule, to go back and follow up. And then we try to ensure that the businesses that are going to require food recovery organization contracts have started to think about those, what that looks like, and getting those kind of in place. Next slide, Ray. And you can see some of the stuff that we give them out. This is another one where you saw the first one, but the one behind it is more of a in-depth 1383 and how it directly affects tier 1 and tier 2 generators. Next slide, Ray. Tier 2 generators, again, same thing as the tier 1s. I just put it on here just so you understand the slight differences between them, but we've been treating them the same at Mid-Valley. We're educating. We are currently assessing to make sure that tier 1s are falling under the tier 1 requirements and tier 2 the same, and then ensuring that they know what food recovery organizations are in their county, who they can work with, and then going through the contract process to make sure they understand what needs to be done from their side to be compliant. Next slide, Ray. One thing that we do also do is cleanup events. And I'm sure other jurisdictions do these as well, but we use these as an educational tool as well. Obviously, it's great to have cleanup events, one, because it encourages public participation, and two, it ensures any unacceptable material stays out of certain waste streams. But we also use it as an educational tool where when they pull up, we hand them a recycle guide or an instructional service guide that's tailored to that jurisdiction. And then we also remind them of all the household waste that is not permitted in their trash. And you can see on our cleanup flyer here in red, we delegate which stuff isn't going to be going into the stream. We also put stuff that will be accepted. And so it's a very good opportunity to engage one-on-one with generators and teach them the right and wrong ways of disposing of their waste. Next slide. And that's it. You know, I try to do it pretty quick and easy. I think a lot of the stuff got covered in the other slides, but if you guys have any questions or comments for me from a third party aspect, I will say one thing. I know that one of the questions about Third Eye came up. We are currently using Third Eye. Our Third Eye is going into our documents with our contamination monitoring. So we are hitting all of those with the Third Eye. And then also, so Third Eye, we strictly use for commercial and residential. And then on top of that, our recycle coordinator is taking pictures on their site assessments of what they see. So, you know, when it comes to, and I think there was a question earlier about how you go about scheduling these site visits. For us personally, we schedule a site visit the day before trash is going to be serviced or recycle or organics. So we make sure that we get to that can when it's its most fill, so we can understand exactly what's being thrown in each stream. So I'm just kind of answering some of the stuff that I saw from what we do. That's kind of how we handle both of those. With that, if you have any questions, put it in the Q&A. If you'd like my information to ask me anything from a third hauler perspective, I can send it to, I know Ray has it, but if anybody else needs it, I can put it in the meeting chat. Again, thank you guys, and I will send it back to Ray.
Thank you so much, Thomas. And thank you to all the participants and all of you that have indicated you're interested in participating in the peer share. Before we get to that, we'll go ahead and go to our first question from the SLCP inbox. Esmeralda, I believe you have that.
Yes, so the first question that came into the inbox is from Nadia Cook with City of Laguna Woods. I do see Nadia on, so I will unmute you, Nadia, if you want to go ahead and ask your question regarding contamination.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
We're having a hard time hearing you, Nadia.
Okay. Sorry about that. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I was just curious, our city does waste evaluations, biannual waste evaluations for contamination monitoring. And both times we've come across the same situation where a route, a non-organic route, so I believe it's the gray trash container, they're sampled, and we see above 25%, I would call it contamination. It's recycling that's found in the trash container waste stream. But it isn't organic. It's just, recycling that's supposed to be sorted and placed in the blue container. So as I was going through the regulations, based on the definition of prohibited container contaminants and what constitutes non-compliance with the waste evaluations, it seemed like based on that definition, non-organic waste found in non-organic waste streams or containers would not constitute non-compliance. Hoping I make sense. So I kind of tried to check it out with my CalRecycle rep. We looked it over. He kind of agreed that the definition of prohibited container contaminant seems to only relate to organics found in non-organic containers or non-organics found in organic containers, and not anything to do with non-organics and non-organic containers. So just wanted to get some clarification on that so I can be absolutely certain of what is technically considered non-compliant for the waste evaluation.
Hey, Nadia, thank you for your question. I appreciate the complexity. So, for the gray container, if there are materials that are defined that should be in the blue or the green container, and they're showing up in the gray container, that's a prohibited container contaminant. So, earlier section of the regulations, it defines what needs to go in the gray, what needs to go in the blue, with some flexibility there. So basically, if you're finding recyclables, those items that would go in the blue container, you're finding those are being thrown away in the gray container, that should result in education. So I hope that's helpful.
Nadia, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
There we go. I'm so sorry. I'm having technical difficulties here. That makes sense. So that in that situation with recycling found in gray container waste stream, that would be considered non-compliant and would require the education per SB 13.
You got it.
Correct.
You got it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And Ray, maybe at when our next commercial webinar, we'll focus more on waste evaluations versus route reviews and some of the different things that folks are doing. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so we do have a couple responses from our participants in the chat. For anybody joining the webcast, I'll just go ahead and read some of those responses. Doug Kraus responded to Sarah Ahern's question regarding food recovery, indicating that yes, food recovery is part of their program, that's City of Hermosa Beach, and specified in the new services included in the franchise. amendments. Let's see. Thomas also shared the contact information. Thomas is with Mid Valley Disposal. The email is thomash@midvalleydisposal.com. Next question comes from, I think this is going to be our last question before jumping into the peer match portion, is from Kim Riley asking Thomas. Let's see. Go ahead and unmute you, Kim, if you'd like to go ahead and ask Thomas your question.
Hey, it's Kim. I'm a consultant down in Orange County. I think bulk of my question is there, and I think Thomas answered it, but I was just wondering, maybe from the group as well, but when conducting site visits or I guess inspections of tier 1 edible food generators, how often those are occurring, and if, for example, they don't have, say, like a contract or written agreement in place, how often somebody is going back to check in with them, if it's yearly or if they weekly, or I think Thomas responded and said quarterly until they're compliant. So that was helpful.
Yeah, Kim, you are correct. We go back quarterly for non-compliant generators, whether that be they don't have a contract in place or they haven't even reached out to a food organization yet.
Mm-hmm.
We at Mid Valley have a food recovery specialist that I haven't talked about, and I'm sure when the next webinar comes about, if we are presenting again, I will bring her on to talk more about what she kind of does. But our food recovery specialist kind of looks over all of the accounts, make sure that they're being compliant, which ones aren't, and then she will delegate our recycle coordinators to go out and get information. I know from us personally, we have done a lot of site assessments over the past year because like I said, we do 30 per week. But we are making a concerned effort to go out January 1st or the first week of January and reach back out to all of our tier 1 and tier 2 generators, again, to hand them out more education as a reminder of what needs to be done, educate the tier 2 generators that have forgotten that they need to have this stuff done this year, and then as well as kind of seeing where they are in the compliance aspect of it. So quarterly is how we do it. And I think we do that because we just want to be proactive, because I think for us, we're not trying to enforce, we're trying to educate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we are trying to hit those businesses as many times as we can, keep it even, obviously, with all the generators that we do have to follow up with. But we definitely try to reach the tier 1, tier 2s as often as we can, as a constant reminder of what needs to be done.
Thank you for that. And you said your tier 2 outreach has already began, right? Is that throughout this year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we identified tier 1 and tier 2s in January 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sent out educational packets to all tier 1 and tier 2. Of course, the educational packet was slightly different for the tier 1s and the tier 2s, but we did give the tier 2s a heads up in January 2022, letting them know that by 2024, the end of 2024, they're going to have to be fully compliant. So that's why we think as a hauler, it's important to go back again this year. I know that tier 1s have a pretty good grasp of what needs to get done, but we want to make sure that tier 2s are still tracking what they need to do.
Yeah. Are you finding that between tier 1, tier 2, that outreach is entirely different? I imagine, grocery stores, I've seen a lot of edible food recovery programs are in place. If are able to tick off the box, we've got the contract, we've got the types of food, the pounds of food. Tier 2s, it's just, there's a lot of different businesses there.
You're right. But a lot of the grocery stores do already have like buyback programs in place. We've encountered. I think for our tier 2 biggest challenge is probably the schools. Getting the school districts on board with meeting and understanding what they need to do. And then the biggest deal for us as a hauler is reminding that the jurisdiction that they are required to record, keep, and report, to whereas maybe 341 and 1826, that may have been a little bit different, and Carrie can speak to that, but I know in our jurisdictions, we really are pushing the idea that we are here to do the legwork, but you guys are still going to have to record, keep, and report and understand how that is reported, because and I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but if if a food generator has a food organization in their city, then the food organization is the one that's going to be record keeping what's being brought in so that it doesn't get double reported. So there is some caveats to that, and it's very situational based on where the food recovery organization is located as opposed to where the generator is located. So navigating that has probably been the toughest issue for us, I would say.
Thank you for that perspective. That's really interesting.
Thomas, thank you so much. And we promise you will, you and your team member will be at one of our February or March edible food recovery webinars.
We're happy to help in any way we can.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you all. Kara, do you think it's a good time to jump to peer share?
Definitely.
Okay, so we have one request from Kelly Nelson to have Nick of Zabel speak on their behalf. Let me go ahead and unmute Nick and provide a little bit more context on peer share. So this is an opportunity for the jurisdictions and other stakeholders to go ahead and share challenges and solutions that you're deploying in order to implement your commercial programs. So with that, I open the floor to Nick of Zabel and remind everybody that if you are interested in also contributing, please go ahead and indicate that in the chat or sending it to our SLCP inbox.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, thank you for the opportunity. Really great forum here and learning about all the great programs. I'm Nick Balachandran, founder and CEO of Zabel. We're a tech startup based in Northern California. We currently work with universities and hospitals who use our AI-powered web and mobile apps to conduct lid flips and follow up with targeted outreach to stakeholders. And we were recently awarded a grant from the EPA to help build our technology to support SB 1383 specifically. So really just interested in getting some feedback from jurisdictions on our route review tool and contamination monitoring tool. And we're willing to offer it for free for a limited time for those who want to get it done early in 2023. So I will put the information in the chat, but just looking for feedback and really appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, Nick, thanks so much for sharing that. That's the kind of, solutions and sharing that we're looking for in this peer share. Ray, I think we have someone else that just volunteered.
Looks like we have Haley Knert. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Happy to share recent pilot success for auto enrollment. Haley, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and please feel free to go ahead and share. Thanks.
Hi, yes, it's Haley Cooner. You hit it very close. So I'm with HF&H Consultants, and I just wanted to share a recent success story for a little pilot program using some postcards that were sent. So 30 or so commercial businesses were targeted in the city of Garden Grove, and so they were sent a postcard. They had an amount of time to contact the city's exclusive hauler and either sign up for their own programs and right size, or they were notified that their container would be dropped off. And the reason the city chose to do a small pilot was just to work out all the kinks and the bugs, and then now the city is going to focus all of 2023 on full enrollment and send out all of the containers and everything, knowing that some of those bugs are worked out. So I do recommend doing a little test run before you try and tackle the larger city. And just so everyone's aware, Garden Grove has a population of 170,000. So give you a little context for the size of Garden Groves. It's not a tiny city.
Haley, thank you so much for sharing that. And Haley, if you wouldn't mind, we would love to get a link to the postcard information that you sent out. Michelle is going to be chatting in a little bit about all the resources that we've been adding to our website on great local examples so that we can use what's working well for each other. So would love it if you would send that our way so we can get that shared.
Absolutely. If anybody has any questions for Haley, please let us know. If we don't have any more interest in...
Is anyone else that's listening willing to share anything about how you've been implementing your commercial program, anything that's worked well, or maybe you're having a challenge and you'd like to ask others on the webinar what they did about it.
So Haley indicated that Garden Grove has a Dropbox with all of their outreach available. So we'll go ahead and try to get a link to that. Oh, it's in the chat already. Thanks so much, Haley. It's at ggcity.org/publicworks. We'll go ahead and get that posted for you all in the webcast as well. We have a couple questions for offline. I don't see anything else in the chat right now, Kara. Do you want to go ahead and go to Michelle Martin?
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump there. Thanks, Ray.
Absolutely. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ray. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Martin, Branch Chief for the Financial Resources Management Branch at CalRecycle. I wanted to give a quick update about the Organics Grant Program criteria. As Zoe mentioned in her opening comments, the criteria for that program was presented yesterday at CalRecycle's monthly public meeting, and we are making just a few adjustments based on some feedback. A more in-depth presentation about this program will be presented at the January 1383 chat. And in addition, we're still in the planning stages of the remaining 100 million to local jurisdictions, and we'll be developing that criteria in the coming months. One clarification I did want to provide today is about the 3 bin systems. During last month's 1383 chat, there was a question about what portion of a 3 bin system would be eligible under the 1383 grant. Clarification on what could be charged under this grant was sent to all grantees on November 28th, but I also wanted to provide that clarification today as well. So for a 3 bin collection system, the purchase of bins dedicated for organic waste, the green bin, and mixed recyclables, blue bin, which includes collection of cardboard, paper, and other compostable material, are eligible. If the blue bin is solely for the collection of beverage containers, this portion would not be eligible with the 1383 grant funding, but would be covered under the Beverage Container Recycling City County Payment Program funding. So if you have further questions, I encourage you to reach out to your 1383 grant or City County Payment Program grant manager. Thanks so much, and I'll turn it back to Ray.
Thank you, Michelle. And now we have an education and outreach update from another Michelle. Michelle Ceballos, are you able to get on?
I am here. Whether my computer is going to work with me, we'll see. All right. Hello, Michelle Ceballos. Let's open that. I am a senior environmental scientist here in the Local Assistance and Market Development Group. I am happy to share with you our updated SLCP education and outreach page, and I'm getting ready to try to share my screen.
Okay, let me go ahead and stop my share. I wasn't sure if you worked out your technical bandwidth issue there.
We'll see. All right. Okay, so let me see if I can get everything working here. All right. All right, I'm going to show you guys how to get there from the homepage of CalRecycle. See if I can get it to share my screen here. Let's try this one. Can you all see that? Okay, so here's our homepage. It's rather easy to find. If you go to Programs, you can go to SB 1383 Implementation. Oh, are you guys able to see it? Looks like it went away.
No, sorry. Oh, now we got your screen, Michelle.
Okay. And you can see the homepage?
The homepage, yep.
All right, perfect. My computer keeps freezing. All right, so again, if you go to our calrecycle.sba.gov and go to SB 1383 Implementation, click on that. All right. And as you scroll down, I'll try not to do this too fast. You'll see all the information regarding SB 1383, the history, our regulations, and then you're going to see the different parts of SB 1383. So we've talked about the collection and recycling, procurement requirements. We keep going. And the next set of information you can find here is called Resources for Implementation. That's here. It's Education Outreach Resources. Very handy. All right. So the website still has presentations for city council members and county boards. There's still model signage and adequate resources for implementing programs, overall programs. So there's training videos, model tools. Let's see. So here's our statewide and regional training webinars, which are still very helpful. And jurisdictional trainings for collection services and container colors on YouTube. Here's the model tools with jurisdictional examples. So the franchise agreement, ordinance, procurement policy, edible food recovery, and our model signage in all these different languages. That's all still there. What's new is the SB 1383 implementation program examples and how they've been organized. So here's our commercial multifamily implementation examples. These examples are given to us from jurisdictions, and they're direct links to their websites or to forms that they have provided to us. So you can see there's examples for waivers, letters for business owners, and for the tenants for label and color requirements for collection, notice violation letter, and additional resources such as letters, flyers, and websites for multifamily property owners and residents. There's great resources in here. And then there is also self-hauler education. So moving on, we have edible food recovery program and the food recovery organization links that we've gotten from across the state. Some include actual food recovery organizations, some are county programs. So we have those, and then we have specifics. So edible food recovery requirement letters to tier 1 and tier 2 generators, food recovery organizations, letters to those, and also capacity study. So we have all these great information. If you need any additional resources, or if you have some resources, please feel free to share. You can send them to the slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov inbox, and we can have them added to the site. I know I've been talking to quite a few jurisdictions, and they're finding this extremely helpful to see examples or templates that they could incorporate. And Ray, that's all I have. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Michelle. I don't think we have any questions yet. Let me go ahead and check with Esmeralda. Do you have anything specific for Michelle?
I'm not seeing any, Ray.
Okay.
Hey, Michelle, can you share, make an invitation for others who might have really good examples that they think would be good to post, and how they need to do that?
Yep, I had just said that. So go ahead, if you do have good examples of whether it's letters to tenants, any other really good resources, flyers, notice of violation examples, inspection forms, anything like that, we can add to this list. So go ahead and send that to the slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov, and I'll get that information, and we can get that uploaded and available for others.
If there are no other questions, just go ahead and do a quick reminder. Please submit any other questions that come up or requests for some of the resources that you saw today to slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov. If we didn't get a chance to get to your question today, we will follow up with you. To be notified of when this presentation recording is posted and when our next webinars are occurring, please be sure you're signed into or subscribed to the SLCP listserv. You can access that through the CalRecycle website. Let's see. Our next upcoming webinar will occur January 18th. We'll focus on multifamilies, as well as the February and March on edible food recovery. If you'd like to participate in either of those as a panelist, please go ahead and reach out to me directly, and I'll go ahead and see where that best fits. My email address is ray.carranza@calrecycle.ca.gov. That's rae.carranza@calrecycle.ca.gov. Any final remarks, Kara?
Yeah, Ray, first, a big thanks to you for organizing these important webinars. I think they're fantastic. I'm grateful to all of our stakeholders for presenting and for sharing. To our presenters, I was just in awe of all that you're doing. And I'm really grateful for you sharing your experiences. I think the best thing that we can do as we're rolling into implementation of 1383 is to share with each other what's working, what are our challenges, and brainstorm with each other on how to come up with solutions to those challenges. So I thank you all. Also, feel free as we develop our schedule for our webinars starting in the second quarter of 2023. We'd love to hear from our stakeholders. What are the topics that you're most interested in, and who do you know that would be good speakers to share information? We are extraordinarily grateful to all of our stakeholders for all of your hard work in implementing this so important regulation. I know this has been a huge lift for all of you, and I am extraordinarily grateful. This is making a difference. It will make a difference. And together, I know we will be successful. So thank you so much. I hope each of you has wonderful holidays. And please let us know if we can do anything to assist you. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for participating. Have a wonderful holiday season to those who celebrate.